Right. Here, I would say we're live, but this is just a unedited interview. Not quite live, but as if we were live. So, my name is Jaylon Gundies. I am a representative of One Brilliant Arc, a story studio that helps uplift marginalized voices who are telling authentic stories. And I'm here with Jessica Ann. I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself.
Jessica Ian, and I am an indie author. And I am Woven in Time, a fantasy book that just came out last month. And I also have a Substack publication called Wildest Dreams, where I talk about what it takes to live your wildest dreams, pushing through, boundaries and things like that, or fears and doubts, and how I became a published author. So, and I want to give back to other indie authors who are on a similar journey to me. And I've met so many wonderful people on Substack, and that's why we started the Indie Author Spotlight as a way to highlight and help support other indie authors.
And we are so excited to have Kate here with us from GenerateMagic. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We're really excited to hear about your work in progress. But do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the book that you are currently writing?
Sure. And I also want to thank both of you for having me on. And thank you, Jessica, because it's through you that I found out about this opportunity. So I appreciate that. And I love Woven in Time. In fact, I just wrote an
So
article
good.
on Substack about it.
Amazing.
It was really, really good. And yeah, you just really inspired me. The idea, the wildest dreams, right? And the idea of dreaming big. And because like many people, I I mean, I wanted to be an author, like a fiction author since I was a child. And that's like, I've gone through like a lot of phases, but I would say that's the one thing that's kind of stayed constant is like that's always just been my dream. But at the same time, I definitely absorbed a lot of the stereotype and the mentality about like the starving artist.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I kind of pushed this aside because I didn't believe it was possible for me. And I couldn't really see myself making a living that way. And I thought that I was just kind of setting myself up for disappointment. And so even though I did pursue a career in writing, so currently I'm a freelance copywriting. That's kind of technically what I do for pay. And but even when I was doing that, there was always this kind of part of me that still felt kind of like unfulfilled, I guess, or that, yeah, this just this kind of vague sense of emptiness. And when people would ask me, like people, because I went to school for creative writing, so people would ask me, like, oh, how's your writing coming along? Or how's your book coming along? And yeah, there would always be a part of me that would kind of feel, what's the word? Kind of almost like I was kind of dying inside, when I would say, oh, well, it's going, and, and kind of like when something isn't really going the way you want it to, but you're kind of trying to talk over the fact or
I feel
and
that.
and then I would actually see these classmates of mine on LinkedIn and who are doing really amazing things. So like one of them is like this award-winning playwright now. And then another one, he actually co-wrote a book with 50 Cent.
Oh my gosh.
And yes.
Random.
And Aaron Philip Clark is his name. And so my classmate. And he's very talented. And so I was looking at this and it actually, even though like at first when I saw like all of this taking place, I kind of felt what's the word? Like yeah, like I felt like a little bit sad, like oh man, it's been so long and look at all these people doing great things and I haven't even I haven't even published anything yet. And but then it actually kind of motivated me because I was like, here are people that I actually know that I actually went to school with who are doing these really amazing things. And so that was kind of a sign to me that I could accomplish it too. And even though these classmates, they were definitely very talented, but I think the main thing is that they just had this passion and they stuck with it basically, and they were committed to it. And I was like, okay, so that's a sign to me that that really all it takes is just committing to that vision. And in fact, Aaron, the one that wrote the book with 50 Cent, like I remember when he was my classmate, and so we would do our writing workshops, and the what he would ask to be workshopped, it was like 20 to 30 pages long every time. And and I remember always thinking, oh my God, I had so much work already. I was like, oh man, it's going to take me hours to go through this. But looking back, like I really admire that. Like I could see now, he was just super hard worker and he was super committed. And so anyway, that was all a very long-winded explanation. But yeah, all of this kind of motivated me to really kind of get a book out into the world. And so I have one novel that I've been working on for over a decade now, and and it's a dystopian novel, and it has like I want to say seven characters. There might be more, and not just seven characters, but like seven points of view, and the super complicated plot, and just there's been lots of complications in writing it and getting out into the
Just one
world.
book, or is it going to be a series?
It's going to be a series,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's been a lot of complications with that book. And so then it kind of dawned on me. I was like, there's so much tied up in this book and it's taking so long. And I was like, I'm just going to write something like this, like a fun romance and fun, kind of silly, something I can whip out really quickly. And and like every idea of mine, it's never super quick.
We don't do anything halfway. We're
Yeah.
writers.
And it's I learned very quickly too that it doesn't really follow the tropes of like a typical romance because I worked on it for like a few months and it was very clear that I needed some structure because that was the good thing about schools. You always had like a structure and deadlines and I was just kind of floundering around. So I signed up for a workshop, an online writing workshop that was romance. It was a romance writers workshop. And it was a really good workshop. The teacher was super good. But on the first day, they showed us the slideshow that was like all the tropes in romance. And it was very clear that mine was not typical in any means because you don't even meet the main love interest until like chapter 14. And there's other love interest before that. And so it's like this, I just can't I have a hard time just doing things the normal, easy way. So but I also
I was
I
gonna say it
Mhm.
sounds like that's like the best stories because
For
you
sure.
are making yourself stand out. You're not just following what everyone else has already written. So
For sure.
anyway, as you were.
And so the title is just Go For It is the title. And go for is I don't know if it's a hyphen or a dash, one of those symbols. And it has to do with a gopher, so it's kind of like a double meaning. And so the whole thing was inspired by Alice in Wonderland and the whole idea that life can change in an instant. And so that was like the core inspiration for it. And I guess that was kind of the philosophical bit to it. But then the other seed was like years ago when I was a tutor, one of my friends asked me, he was like, "Oh, do you ever meet any hot dads?" And and for some reason that line always just stayed with me. And I was like, that would make a really great story. And so those were kind of like the two driving forces behind the novel.
like as if Elsa, had like is grown up, is like what is the main character? How, I guess, like tell us a little bit about the character in your book.
Yes, and so I would say it's very loosely inspired by Alice in
Okay.
Wonderland. And so the main character, her name is Hannah, and so she's a young woman who went to an Ivy League school, And now she's just kind of floundering around, hasn't really found her calling in life. She's waiting tables, living with her parents, and her nights mostly consist of, eating macaroni and cheese and watching reruns of Two and a Half Men. Not at all based on me, by the way. No,
Like I said,
no,
this actually sounds amazing. I would love if my nights were like that.
Little side note, so I have some of my characters in my book also, and my sister is the only one that was able to call out. She's reading it, she's like, "Oh, this is so you." Like, nobody's supposed to know this. Anyway, go on.
well,
Yes.
and the in the past, my mom has kind of called me out on basing my characters off of her. And so I just decided for this one, I'm just going to write it under a pen name. And my mom is not going to know about it until I'm already famous. And then by then it won't really matter.
There you go. That works.
And so, yeah, so she's just kind of unfulfilled and doesn't have much of a social life. And then one day she discovers this mysterious underground tunnel behind a Rite Aid. And and it leads to an underground dance party. And so, yeah, and so that's kind of where I guess the Alice in Wonderland theme comes in. And so she literally kind of goes underground and there is a lot of psychedelics, and so she experiences like an awakening of sorts. And so I guess that's kind of like the first thread of the story. It's just kind of like this awakening and just kind of learning how to start living, actually living instead of just always kind of living in her head and playing it safe. And so that's kind of like one thread, and that's kind of like I guess, the magical realist side of it. And then, yeah, then eventually she becomes a tutor for rich families. And so that's when the second thread of the novel comes in, the romance thread. And so Mr. Goldstein is the love interest, the father. And
Yeah, there's the
I
happy
can
plot
picture
there.
him in my head just from the
yes,
name.
yes, exactly. And I thought, and I wanted to build up to it because I felt like it would be a very different story if you immediately started with Mr. Goldstein on page one. And so by the time you get to his character, we've already kind of gotten to know Hannah really well, and she's already kind of had a number of disappointing romantic experiences leading up to that. And so all of it is kind of like setting the foundation. And that as a reader, you're almost kind of rooting for her. Like you really, on the one hand, you acknowledge that this is not quite right, but at the same time, you kind of want her to win for once. And it also kind of like gives some foundation for why she would even be considering this in the first place. And so like on the premise, it's kind of like a really like when I first came up for the idea of the romance, it was just this really kind of like ridiculous idea. But then as I developed it, I wanted you as a reader to actually start buying into it and actually start thinking, well, maybe this could work out. And and there's a lot of kind of moral ambiguity with the whole thing. And but yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it.
Some.
That is really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's really funny how, kind of going back to some of the things that you shared earlier, I relate as a writer who became an editor to the struggle of, I mean, and I know, Jess, you relate as well. There's a lot of writers who have experienced discouragement from following their passion in the arts from the time that they're very young, just because of the way our society doesn't value storytellers. And I think that for the artists who do have that calling in their soul, it's something that you can't ignore. You can, like you said, you can feel like you're missing something inside for so many years, but you really can't ignore that calling, to the point where even where you make a story that is supposed to just be like kind of a break, kind of like be a refreshing bit of inspiration for you, just be silly, whatever it was, you still find such a deep meaning in that because it comes so much from your heart. Um, so besides the challenge of having to kind of overcome the naysayers and the self-doubt that was planted in your own mind, what's been the most challenging part of writing this story for you?
Well, yeah, so there's definitely that aspect of it for sure. And then when it comes to technically writing it, so I would say, like, in a lot of ways, it is easier than writing a dystopian novel because there's a lot of anything that has to do with speculative fiction, right? Whether it's like fantasy or sci-fi, there's like a lot of, yeah, there's just like a lot of world building that goes into it. And, um, and I wish that I had kind of outlined it or at least made just like kind of a rough idea of what I wanted to create before I dove into it. Because there's so many plot holes and I'm still trying to plug up all the plot holes. So that's one of the reasons it's taking so long.
Are
Where
you are you technically a plotter or a pantser usually?
I would say, well, I was purely like a pantser before starting that novel, but then that experience kind of taught me that I would benefit from some structure. And so with this novel, I wanted to approach it, yeah, just with a little bit more structure. And so in addition to taking that writing workshop, I reached out to a former teacher of mine who had always been really like encouraging. And I actually taken a sci-fi workshop with her. And so Jill Dreadful was the name that she went by. And so she was a really good teacher and always really encouraging. And so she actually mentored me for like the first few months of writing the book. And mostly it was just kind of like a process of like accountability. And like at a certain point, I became so motivated that I didn't even really need the accountability anymore. But that definitely helped me when I was getting started. But anyway, she recommended a book called The 90-Day Novel. And that book has been very helpful at again, just forming a very loose outline of the basic beats in the story. And the author, I like the way that he goes about it because he says, you don't, this is not set in stone. You don't have to be married to this, but it's just to give you some sort of framework. And then you can always pivot once you start writing the novel. So having that very rough framework definitely helped me going into it. And definitely a lot changed after I started writing it. But at least it gave me some structure going into it. And as far as plot, yeah, it's definitely a lot simpler. Anything that's character driven, I feel like it's a lot simpler than writing, you know, speculative fiction. But I'd say the one thing that is challenging is writing love scenes. And there's
Fair.
only so many ways you could say, their eyes, met across the room,
And I was trying, and for whatever reason, I don't know if why my characters are always frustrated or something, but they're always furrowing their brows. And I was
Yes.
trying to figure out other ways. Like they knitted their brows, they furrowed their brows.
As an editor, I love ruining writers' days by pointing out those
Those
redundancies.
repetition, yeah.
I feel so bad. I'm like, I'm sorry, but we have to figure something else out. I understand what you're saying though, Kate, with like all of the structure. It's a hard balance to walk
Mhm.
because writing is both an art form and art is very subjective and it should be based on your own style. But story structure in general is also a very technical language that you have to know how to speak it correctly if you want your story to resonate with readers in the most powerful way. Because story structure is something that's been proven to resonate emotionally with people since the beginning of time. So now, like, all of these different formulaic structures, they are super helpful to help you speak the language, but they can also kind of stifle your creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it sounds like you found a great balance between having someone who encouraged you to find your authentic voice and be creative and kind of have that freedom while also giving you a structure to be able to make your story stronger.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was going to say in romance writing especially, and I noticed this because I started reading So Romance too, just to kind of get a better idea. And I noticed that electricity tends to be used a lot. So I often found myself going through scenes and trying to figure out, okay, what's another way to say this? But what I found is that whenever the best way to avoid cliches is to either draw from memory and so have the character kind of bring in memories, and that immediately kind of makes it feel more authentic and more specific to that character's experience, or to use analogies. And obviously, you don't want to get too carried away because sometimes you can get kind of ridiculous with the analogies.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to kind of to pile on too. I have a hard time just stopping at one. But I find both of those frameworks really work good for, yeah, for writing love scenes.
That is such a helpful tip. I'm so grateful that you shared that. It's making, again, my editor heart just so excited to read this book because this creativity and this, you're not only writing from your authenticity, from your voice and the way you see the world very uniquely, but you're also writing from the very unique way that your characters see the world and centering that. So it makes me so excited. And I'm grateful that you shared those tips for anyone listening. That is how you write.
Yeah, I love that. So maybe we need to have a whole nother like Substack live or talk or something about like character development because I feel like we could talk
Yes.
about this for a long time
Yes.
too. Is like maybe you can talk on it just a little bit. Is like so how do you have a process for like I guess developing your characters? How do you find their unique voices, like you said, within your own author's voice? How do you make those distinct? Because romance is more of a character-driven genre. How have you done that in this novel? I'm curious, Kate.
Yes, for sure. And I find that, well, I do tend to draw like a lot of my own experiences, but it's always kind of like a hybrid, right? And so it's kind of bringing in like different elements and then kind of like weaving it together and making it more like theatrical, adding some dramatic flair to it. And this is actually Jill, the teacher that I spoke of, she would bring on guest speakers for her class. And one of them I'll never forget, this woman said the advice that she gave is to always bring something real into your writing. And so she said when she finally started getting her stories accepted by publishers, she said it's because she brought in real memories. And so that kind of gives it like a ring of authenticity to the scene.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah. And so all these experiences that I had, a lot of them were really, humiliating or just awful experiences. But it's like, man, I could really, those, I could use, milk them. And
Yes,
so like
we
one of
love the
my,
recycling that
yes.
happens with writers. You can take all the
Gosh.
worst memories of your life and recycle them into something beautiful.
Yeah, I recently saw someone else post a Substack note about this and was like, "Don't ever piss off an author because it's
Yes,
up in your next book."
exactly.
I was like, "Oh, so true."
Exactly. So I had a memory where I really fell for this guy, and it was basically like a one night stand. And so I couldn't really, even I knew that I couldn't say I love you or anything like that because it was like a one night stand, but I still wanted to communicate my feelings to him. So I said, I really like you. And he said, "Oh shit." And and so I was like, that has to be used in a story.
I love it.
Sad and also great that you can we can all collectively hate his response together.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. So who is it that you hope to reach with this story? Who, besides for yourself, and in order for you to feel, um, I mean, kind of, I feel like there's a better way to say this, but obedient to your calling, obedient to the passion that you have inside of you, um, who are you writing for?
So I guess, well, what I look for when I'm reading is to feel like a sense of connection and like a sense of not being alone. And so you read a moment in the story and you think, oh, wow, like I'm not the only one that's experienced that. And so that's essentially what I'm hoping to carry forth as well. And so anybody, regardless of who they are or their background, because I can't really predict exactly who it's going to reach. But like when they're reading it, they'll have those moments where it's like, oh wow, I'm not the only one that's experienced this. And and one thing, yeah, I definitely like to write about, moments or characters, yeah, that insecurity is like kind of a common theme, or just feeling like alone or isolated. But also, I found like another thing coming up was desires that you can't say out loud, or desires that you are like ashamed to speak about out loud. So that's something that just came up, not just for the main character, but through like another character like as well. And it was so there's a line in there where she's like, yeah, sometimes some of my desires, they're not, they don't fit into like a pretty, Instagram quote, or, they're not hashtagable. And so, yeah, so I feel like that's kind of like a common thread as well. And yeah, I guess I'll just try and throw it in there. It's sort of a surprise, but I decided just while I was writing it, I intuitively thought at some point it would be fun to make Mrs. Goldstein a character. And
Oh, the
and so
intrigue deepens.
and so I have all these chapters narrated by Mrs. Goldstein. And so on the surface it seems like their life is really perfect. Like they live in this really nice house and their children, go to the best private schools, but like underneath she's very like frustrated with kind of, or just tired of kind of having to maintain this lifestyle. And so and there's like one scene where she fantasizes about just like getting in a car and just driving off. And and yeah, and then there's another scene where she goes on this long rant about the expectations that are placed on parents. And she says, yeah, on the one hand, your kids, they're supposed to have like emotional intelligence and make straight A's and be perfect, at their chosen profession, their chosen instrument or whatever. And but she says, then on the other hand, you can't be a helicopter parent either. And and she's like, and you want to, you have to feed your kids the most wholesome food and all organic ingredients, but then God forbid they ever go to a friend's house and eat a cupcake. And
I really appreciate the beautiful mission that you have in writing your stories. I think that for anyone listening who is also a writer, just a reminder from Kate's story and what she shared with us about her journey. There is someone out there who needs to hear the words that only you can say in order to feel less alone in their experience. So even if you feel like everyone else is writing a book, there is still a reason why you need to write a book, because there's something that only you can say to make someone feel less alone.
Yes.
Kate, where are you at in the writing process right now? How close are you to being done? And when can we read it?
Yes.
So I'm currently in the editing phase right now. And so, yeah, I would say I'm definitely like over halfway done, probably about a third of the way done right now. And so I'm hoping, I don't want to make any promises because I do tend to work pretty slowly, but
But
I
if you
am
do drop a
hoping,
date, we're gonna hold you to it so that we get to read this book sooner than later.
but I am hoping to have it completed by the summer,
Okay.
Okay, that's
or at the
exciting.
very least in 2026. I'll just say
Yes,
that.
there we go.
Yay! Very excited. So, where can people follow along your writing journey and hear about when this book does come out?
I would say my Substack is definitely the best place for that.
Awesome.
That's Generate Magic, right? Is the name of
I
your
believe so,
publication.
yes.
Yes. We will link it down below. So, anyone listening, go check out Kate, go check out her writing, check out Generate Magic. There's some very beautiful words that are being published over there. And I
Thank
think that
you.
it's encouraging for all of us who are also working to put out important stories into the world and encourage other people who are going through the hard work of putting out important stories. So I want to thank you so much, Kate, for being here with us and for sharing your journey so transparently and so honestly. Truly, it's encouraged me, and I hope that it's encouraged other writers who are listening.
Yes, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
thank you for every, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say I appreciate everything you're doing with this publication as well. I really loved like all the pieces that you put out so far and all the interviews that you've done. And yeah, just your mission, like I really resonate with it.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to have Jess as my partner in crime to be able to help spotlight all of these indie authors.
Yeah, like there's such a, I mean, Substack community is so great. So
Oh, I know.
I
I can't.
loved everyone I've met through here, and I honestly like it's such just encouragement to keep going. Like you were saying at the very
Totally.
beginning, it's like I need this community to like help keep me hopeful that we, we're gonna make it. There's beauty in the world, there's creativity in the world. We really can create a better future, and it's so exciting what we're doing.
Totally. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Substack. Like it's just been a few months that I've been on it, and every time I log in, it's just so like exciting, and there's such connection here and so many great writers. And yeah, I was on various other social platforms for years before this, and basically just kind of toiling away in obscurity and, hoping the right hashtag or the right thumbnail, would attract somebody's attention. And Substack is just completely different.
It really is.
We love the way that it centers and uplifts authentic voices. Because
Exactly.
that's really where the power of story is. It's not in a hashtag, it's not in a thumbnail. Those things help, but in a world where that's the only value, you end up missing out some of the really good stories that matter.
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, I appreciate all the work that both of you are putting out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for listening too. We really appreciate you being here as part of our community on Substack or on YouTube, wherever you see this. So thank you again, and keep writing, keep working on your stories, and we can't wait to see what you put out into the world. So we'll see you all later.
Thank you.